again, the healing portion is important. Like if you break your leg or something like that, okay, let it heal. But going to the gym and building strength isn't about protecting or healing your leg anymore, right? It's about strengthening it, seeing how much weight you can push and what, that kind of stuff.
Welcome back to the Mind Change Podcast. I'm your host, Heather McKean. And back with us again today is Kent McKean.
Hi, thanks.
Hi. Glad you're here. Take this opportunity, please, and thank you to like, subscribe, download, do all the things. That really helps us to continue to do what we're doing and meet the needs of all of you out there. So whether you're watching or listening, we're so grateful to have you with us. All right, so today we are talking about growth mindset versus perpetual healing.
Yes.
All right, so
it's a big distinction.
It is, but it might be a little vague for some people.
Yeah.
All right, so what led us here? Why are we talking about this?
Well, so the wellness or healing world has become very large, right, in the last number of years, whether that's people that do therapy, whether that's people that are, just going to this retreat and that retreat. It's become a thing, not just for exclusive people, but everyone's looking for something, even if it's international or going down to South America or whatever, right? Like people are finding retreats. And that's amazing. And that's great. And that people want to grow and overcome the trauma and the problems and whatever is getting them stuck in life. The dilemma comes when people are simply looking for that next thing to heal. And then that next thing to heal. And then that next and next and next. And what ends up happening is all you're doing, it's a rabbit hole of healing, perpetual healing, that there's never an end in sight. And that can be problematic because you're going to keep finding things that need to be healed.
Right. Yeah, I can see how this would get complicated because on the one hand, even something that we say often is like, we're never done.
Right, of course.
But if we're taking that from a healing perspective, and what people hear is we're never done healing, the assumption on the other side of that, or the equal sign on the other side of that is, oh, I guess we're still sick.
Yeah, so it would be like taking someone and thinking, well, there's a right way this person's supposed to be, and here's all the problems, and let's continue to fix the problems, versus looking at it a little bit more of an evolutionary way, where this person continues to grow, continues to evolve, continues to become better and better and better.
Yeah, I definitely see this in my journey as I was, really seeing a lot of progress initially, and then thinking, and especially because I was doing a lot of chronic illness, there was legitimately this need to heal, right? If we think about what the word heal means, it's like to resolve, often to resolve a sickness, right? To heal, or
which
a
is
wound,
important.
Right? Like there's a wound and it needs to be healed. When it's healed, it's no longer infected or open or whatever thing, right? If we're talking kind of that framework that most of us have. Then if we put that into this kind of work, then if we're continuing to heal and we see it that way, then we need to keep finding wounds.
So that's, again, in one sense, your reticular activating system finding the problems, right?
Right. And there's some languaging around that I think is important. And there's also, it's the mindset that we go into. And I've definitely seen that, again, like I said, in my journey, but also in our student community, right? And we've now have people who've been doing this for, in this community and learning and using the mind change method in many different ways for years. And this is kind of one of those things that we've seen, which is why we're talking about it, is that you get people that are like, okay, I need to heal today, like get into my healing. which on the other side of that says like, okay, there's way more wounds. The presupposition is there's more wounds. And so are there more things that we can work on? Absolutely. That's where we say we're never done. But I think what's important is, and it was a big moment for me, was when I was like, I'm good. I'm not just oozing wounds all over the place anymore, emotionally even. And I think that right there is this that can mess with your head if you come from a belief system of being broken. So like for me, one of the things that was at play there was, remember, I was doing chronic illness as an excuse, not knowing this, obviously this was subconscious, but as an excuse to get more of my needs met, to get some love or attention or people to do things for me, right? That was not my conscious mindset for it. Because also for me, doing things for somebody means you love them. That was that link that I had in my mind. So to continually be broken or sick or wounded was that space where that meant I was worthy of, or it was okay to be asking for help and getting help, or focusing on myself, taking time for myself. What happens when I'm not broken anymore? Not that I ever was. I don't believe in brokenness. But what happens when I'm not broken or wounded or oozing any longer? Then if I have not changed that belief system, then I need to find something else wrong with me to justify investing in me more.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I listen, I see that in my own life as well. Not in the chronic illness way or looking for those kind of problems, but for those of you who are very much into Enneagram and things like that, Heather and I are both ones. So
our marriage is fun.
And so it's like that on a, probably not the best way. The negative way of that would be that things have to be a certain way and it has to be perfect and it's not good enough and all of that. On the flip side, looking at it in the positive realm, it's that we always want to level up. We always want to make things better than they were, right? And that's a great thing. Taking that into consideration, and then my upbringing and my life and all of that, I look at our marriage. And for me, a big wound that I had prior to our marriage was not being adequate enough, not measuring up, all these other things, right? So we come into our marriage, and then, anything and everything that's said, done, or at least felt and perceived from me lowers me, pushes me down, right? I'm not good enough and all these things. And even as I, heal and change things, it was that mentality of, but I need to be a better husband, but I need to be a better father, but I need to, and it was the but that kind of kept me in that wounded space, because it wasn't this idea for me. It wasn't this idea of, man, I'm such a great husband and I just want to get better and better. It really came from a place of, clearly I'm not good enough as a husband or a father or a human or a friend or a whatever. And therefore, I'm looking for all the ways that I should be better. And I know it's a fine line, because I do want to be the best I can at every single thing and every day, right? Continuing to level up. But there's a difference. There's a nuance there of, I have to because I'm not good enough yet. And there must be problems and reasons that I have to heal more things in order to, versus, wow, I'm so amazing right now. And as I continue to live this incredible life, I'm just going to keep searching for ways to level up. So it's a big difference.
It is. It really goes back to the motivation and why we do what we do. And that's really important, because the driver that we have that is propelling us forward into the work or into the investment that we have in this is we're going to get more of. So if I'm moving out of, well, I'm valuable and I'm worthy and I'm going to just keep leveling up and up and up and up and just expanding, then that presupposes that, of course, I'm going to be doing the work. And that work is going to be helping me with the expansion. Mm-hmm. Rather than the motivation being, I'm such a mess, I'm so broken, I've got all these problems, and because that's the driver, that's the why behind the work.
Yeah.
the result is actually different. So the driver is always going to be, or the motivation is always going to be, have an influence on the result. And so it kind of I think of it like metaphorically like vehicles. If you've got a like cherried out, restored Ford Bronco that is like, you know, the paint is just perfect and you've got the great tires and everything like that. It isn't work for me to go out and like rub a nice soft cloth on it. Hint, hint, in case anyone's looking for a birthday gift, you know, but, you know, like that doesn't feel like work for me. Not that I've actually done this because I don't have a Bronco, but I can see this and conceptualize this in my mind. You get the new car, you get the nice thing, and you want to take care of the nice thing. It's nice. You want to keep it nice, right? And it's almost more motivation rather than the vehicle we actually have sitting out in the driveway that we affectionately call ghetto car, that we put a lot of work into because it's broken all the time.
We knew going into it, like, well, this is kind of going to be a scrapper of a car.
And it continues to be a scrapper of a car. Now, many people have driven it and it's helped many people in their life. But the thing about that car is it isn't really worth very much. And we know that. And so when our daughter used it to learn to drive and she inadvertently backed up into the trash can or whatnot, that's okay.
I don't care.
It doesn't matter because it's really banged up anyway, right? But it's like we don't put a lot of work into it. When we do, it's because it's not functioning right and we're frustrated at it and it's like, oh, and then we don't feel great about investing into it. Mm-hmm. To the point where at some point, probably soon, it's going to be out of commission. Rather, when we see ourselves as valuable as this thing that has been restored so beautifully, the care of it doesn't feel like work anymore. It feels like this wonderful thing you get to go do. Right. And also, I'm going to go cruise in that thing. Like, I'm going to cruise in my Bronco. I'm not actually just going to keep it in the garage, by the way. I'm going to use it. That's me. That's the way I think metaphorically. And that really shifted the way I started doing work on myself and the more things that I was doing, because if I was only able to feel good about putting work into myself because of all the ways I was malfunctioning, then that actually says something about my value. Where if I'm like...
Or at least what you value yourself as.
Exactly, which is all that really matters,
right.
Really. And so on the contrary, when I'm like, wow, I'm in like really fine working order. I purr, I hum. I'm really like, I've really reached a beautiful level that I like. It's not over. Like I want to do more. I want to see more, feel more, be more, expand more. And not because I lack,
right,
but because the abundance that's replaced the lack has shown me so much more. And that is what I want more of.
Well, and you're going after whether you're doing the work, the change, the whatever, you're going after these things because you know the outcome is going to make things even better rather than things are so bad right now, I better do this so that, right? And that for me has so much to do with this mentality of, either being, running away from something, the problems, the trauma, or things I need to heal from, versus going towards the goal, the place that I want to be, right? And the way that if we're using metaphors, the way that I like to kind of see it and observe it in my mind is that, we have this terrible thing that I want to get away from, whatever that is. Maybe that's this repetitive problem in our relationship, or this interaction, this way that I am with the kids, or this, same kind of person that keeps showing up in my life, or, like whatever it is, right? Whatever the problem is, I can either be like, I got to do some work so I can get away from this, so that stops happening. Or I can look at it and say, where do I want to go? Well, I know in my abundance, in my worth, I know who I am. And I know in my absolute truest, unfiltered, best, highest self, that's who I am right over there. I'm pointing ahead, right? And man, I'm patient and I'm kind, and the people that I attract in my life and all these things are amazing. And yet maybe there's some things that aren't there yet in my life, but I know that's who I am inherently. And so instead of doing the work or healing or getting into more retreats or more this to get away from the problems, I'm actually stepping into the work, the retreats, the whatever, because I know where I'm going. And even though it may look like you're doing the same thing, the drivers are so different, which means the results and the lasting effects and the continual change and growth is going to look very different as well.
Yeah, that's so true. I see that actually with our last retreat that we did, and we do these retreats right now once a year on this private island in Belize. And the clients that we had, the participants, the retreat participants that came, universally, all of them had already had some victory. And I really could see in each one of them, they were there to take it a step further. And we could get into the same stuff. Like there's still some of the big stuff that needs to get into, but every one of them knew that where they were going to end up was so much better, like in such a better place, because they had already given that to themselves. They'd already experienced that. And then, that retreat, those people, we all came away from that just like transformed, so different. And doesn't have to be a one-time thing. That can be continual. We can continue to see transformation. It doesn't have to be so hard or so much work.
Well, and that's the difference too between if you do see yourself, view yourself, feel this brokenness, this kind of, I have to heal. Think about like a wound. And if all you're doing is constantly putting the ointment on and, hoping that it doesn't fester and all this stuff, and then you take it off and you're like, oh, I got to do more. That's problematic to the body, right? Versus, great, I took care of that. Now I can move. Now I can go and do what I want, right? It's so different.
Yeah, it's a really different, again, like we said, the motivation is going to be the thing that we get more of. Now, that being said, we did have wounds to heal. There was healing that needed to happen before, like that person, let's take the leg wound, the gaping leg wound, maybe wants to run the marathon, and that's the manifestation or the manifesto is run the marathon, but we do need to heal the leg first. And so there is a healing part of this process. I think what we're trying to communicate is don't get stuck in the healing part of it, because there is initial healing. And I think that part of what we do is we're teaching the brain how to heal. It's really just how to change. And when those first few deep core wounds start to get a little bit of bandaging or a little bit of healing, they start to grow a little bit of new tissue, so to speak, if we're staying with the metaphor of the wound. That brings hope. That actually brings healing to other parts of the body. And so the healing part of it is real, and we talk a lot about that, about heal. But we're really addressing people who've been doing the work for a while and then find themselves like, I've heard this before, like, I kind of don't know where to go from here. Do I keep digging into my past? Like, and I'm like, whoo, you can, but how about take a step back and enjoy where you're at?
Yeah, take some time to play, to celebrate, to enjoy, right?
That's part of what we call the work too.
Yeah.
And it's such an important part of it. It's like you want to see where you're at. If you don't take time to interact with your environment from this new mindset, from this new place, then you can't see where else you need to go. Like, that's the thing. You actually need to show up and live and be in communication and in community and in relationship.
So I want to talk about this idea of community and a growth mindset community versus healing community in just a moment. So please let's go there. But I want to backtrack for just a moment. And this whole idea of healing, because again, like you said, this is part of the process. In fact, it's the beginning part of the process. Like, it's super, super important. So if you are hearing this, you're watching this, and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm not supposed to heal. I'm just supposed to keep growing. No. We don't want to just smooth over, positive affirm. Like, there is a healing process. And I'll say for me, I actually didn't realize there was a healing process needed. And so my mentality was just, well, let's just keep moving forward and keep living life. And the problem is I couldn't enjoy play or love, presence, all of that stuff. I couldn't do it because there were wounds that I wasn't able to see, wasn't willing to go there, wasn't willing to change at first because I didn't know they were there. And so for me, doing this work was so important, digging into the past, dealing with the narratives and the problems and the feelings and the stuff that I had stuffed for so long that I had just bandaged all around. It is vital to dig in and heal. But the difference is heal. Don't stay stuck in the tending to the wounds, right? Like, that's a really big difference of, I'm just going to keep staying in the hospital for my whole life, right? Versus, no. I get the help I need. I come out of that and then enjoy. So I just wanted to make sure that our audience knows, no, healing is pretty much where every client, save maybe a couple, come to us. Like, there's maybe a couple that are like, hey, I've done all this work on my own. I've done all these different things. I just want to keep leveling up. That's like amazing. But I would say 99% of our clients are like, boo, here's my 10 pages of my pain cure and all of these other things, right?
Yeah, I think, or we get people like you who are the spouse of someone who had the 10 pages. And this is the benefit, though. It's like how far the person in that person's life has gone, like what they're seeing in them, that's the door, the opening for them to go, wait, I want what you have. Sometimes that's just that's the insight that there's something more there of like, I want what you have.
Right. That
says that there's a lack somewhere. And I think oftentimes under that lack is where we find the wounds. And these are, there's wounds spiritually, there's wounds physically, there's wounds mentally. And those are the things that we want to kind of dig up. But to circle back to what you said about community, I did this in my journey of chronic illness, found communities, Lyme disease community, chronic fatigue community, the various POTS community or whatever
IBS
else.
Community,
IBS, yeah.
Migraine, whatever.
Right, where you're going initially for help. But oftentimes what happens in those groups is there's just the wound is being so focused on that I learned better how to do a lot of my diseases and illnesses in those communities.
Well, this word, people are looking for help, what you said, is realistically, I think people are looking for support, which is a form of help, right? But support, and maybe you can share about this, support of having people that are in the same position as you, stuck in the same problems, doesn't necessarily give us a handout, right?
No. It feels good in the beginning because oftentimes what people are really motivated to is relatability and connection, understanding. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to think that someone feels what they're feeling so that they're not alone.
Well, they need to feel validated, which is important.
Sure. So that's where you first get those like, okay, this is real. And yes, you're suffering. And
right.
That initially feels good. But that's where okay, if that feels good, that should tell us something. That maybe what we're really after is validation, is comfort, is connection. And then why do I have to keep doing this disease to get that? Right? That's where we start to think outside of that a little bit. And that's where the healing comes from. It's healing those initial wounds. What was the core wound where you didn't feel seen, didn't feel heard? How did you experience that? What does that wound look like, sound like, feel like?
Now, for those of you who are maybe tuning in and this is your first episode or you're not totally following us here, clients that we've worked with and obviously the work we've done on ourselves, there's so many emotional drivers behind behind all of the ailments that happen in our body, right? Even if it's chronic, especially chronic things, right? There's all of these emotional drivers, or I'll say lacking emotional needs from when we were younger at different times, which, these things stir up. So,
right. We have a whole episode on that we can link in the show notes on like metaphysical or the body speaking out in a physical way about what has happened to us emotionally. We call those emotional drivers. So we can link that in the show notes. It's really important to go back and sort of see that if you're kind of coming in from a chronic illness standpoint, to see kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah,
there.
listen to that first episode of explanation, and then every couple episodes, right, they get to hear about another emotional driver and some things that could be behind that.
Yeah. And I think that is, one of the common things around physical illness is it's an emotional need that wasn't met. And that not being met and not being seen and not being heard and not being validated, then the body takes over and cries out. And that's still just the message. So to try to treat the problem or the symptom oftentimes doesn't actually get to why we're doing it in the first place.
Or at least something will come back, right? You can get rid of a headache by dealing with the symptom of, taking a pill or whatever, but it's going to keep coming back unless we deal with the root reason behind it.
Yeah, and what's interesting is as we talk about these kind of communities, first of all, you rarely see anyone get well out of them.
The community just gets bigger.
Yeah, right. And then, the stories get a little bit more intense. You rarely do see anyone getting well. But within these communities that I was actually a part of for many years, when someone does, you would think that everyone would be like, whoa, wow, woohoo.
Show me.
There's a little bit of pushback usually in these communities. When someone gets well, there's a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of, sometimes these people get a little bit bullied and you think, but aren't we all here to get well? And maybe on the most surface level, yes, we're all here to get well. But really, again, we're those groups are meeting a deeper emotional need rather than just the healing of the wound or the illness or the sickness, if you will. And that's where you kind of get stuck in that sort of sickness mindset. So we always are looking for the resolution of symptoms. And so then we need to keep finding the symptoms to keep resolving the symptoms, right? Whereas this approach really is going into like, what's the festering, like what's the initial scrape that led in the bacteria that led to the infection, right? Like that's where we really want to go. And if we can find that and heal that, then we get to move past the healing stage and into the growth stage. Okay, now what else do you want to do? Now how much more can you do?
So what would be the difference then? We're talking about this communities. What would be the difference between being in communities where people are, I don't know, you can call it an unwell community, however you want to define that, whatever that's about, versus a community of growth seekers, a community of people that are evolving upwards, a community of people that are just all about continuing to move forward. And yeah, they're maybe doing some retreats and doing some different, healing and meditation and all these different things that, can help, but it's a different kind of community. Explain that.
Oh my goodness. It's really hard, I think, to conceptualize unless you've been a part of it, right? Which we have. And that is the beauty of even coming to like on a live event or a retreat or just, being in community with people. Luckily, we have this large mind change community. I think, so something I love about what mind change produces and supports is this idea of personal responsibility.
Yes, let's talk about that. I wanted to talk about that next, yeah.
If I'm in like a group of people and someone has a particular problem, we say, or a struggle, I don't feel the need to fix because I don't see that as brokenness. I see it as communication. And so I'm actually curious, and I'm curious about their curiosity about it. So the approach that I take isn't one of like, oh, shame, oh, you poor thing, and blah, 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 right? Which oftentimes in these sort of growth communities, that isn't what someone's looking for anymore.
Okay, so what you're saying is, let me make sure I'm understanding. You're not really looking to sink down into where they are. At the same time, you're not just going to be like on this other level and be like, well, you need to come up here, right? So tell me how do you gain that kind of understanding relationship or even community without sinking down, but also not being above?
Yeah, I don't know, because what I'm thinking of, there is no sinking down because there is no down.
Okay, good.
I don't see a level of that person. So I am in this community and someone's got a problem, right? That they're usually bringing it up with such a different energy.
Gotcha.
They're like, hey, so here's the thing that I'm noticing. This is a pattern that I see repeating. They are actually approaching it. What they're looking for is perspective. That's so different.
That's coming even from a victor mindset, right?
Right. Whereas I think in those former communities, what someone wanted was you to be where they were. Like, you can't understand me unless you have felt what I felt.
Okay.
And have suffered the way that I've suffered. And that actually, I realized over time, like, woo, that did a number on me to have to, like, okay, I need to suffer the way that you've suffered, or I can't understand you unless, or that I needed to take this sort of different posture around whatever problem that they were having.
Which is impossible to do anyways, right? Because you can't literally step into someone else's problems, issues, or whatever
No, it's
else.
an impossibility. Like, even if I was doing this same illness and disease, I'm not doing it the same way they're doing it.
Yeah, different environment, different outcomes, different relationships.
Sometimes different motivators, right?
Sure.
Like, we get different benefits from it. So I think that when we talk about this difference of community, first of all, people know they can change. That changes everything.
Yes.
Right? And then they're looking for resources that are going to benefit them with this, what we might call problem. So I just think the energy is different around it. We're able to talk about those things because I'm not responsible for fixing you. You're not broken. So I get to actually hold this really different space for you. And if you are even in kind of a low place,
right,
then I can hold that space for you and be like, okay, that's where they're at right now. Very often, though, in the Mind Change community, when we are together, even online or in our mentoring groups or, whatever, or if we come together live, which is just so much fun, being in a room and a group of other people, or even online with a group of other people who each know that it is their empowerment and responsibility to be in the state that they're in. It's just so different. It really changes things. And we've talked about this before in our student community and our mentoring communities and with the practitioners, like how we love being together. And we've had to sort of name that and be like, this is really because this is a growth mindset that we're all stepping into. If someone has a problem, we're all very curious about the very good reason that person's doing it. And like, what benefits are they getting out of it? And what's what are the motivational or emotional drivers behind it? And it becomes resources rather than whys and stories. And, that it's a bit of a different framework. And I think when each person is autonomous in their own, like, you're not looking to me to make you feel better or to validate you, or to feel sorry for you, or to fix you, or any of those things. You're coming in going, I know this is my responsibility, and I want to do this in community. Oh boy, everything changes.
Yeah.
I know it's a difficult framework for people to think about because we don't really have this in a lot of ways, but it's really cool when we do, and we get to experience it. And if I'm the one that comes in with the problem or whatever, to have this group of people who just innately know that whatever is going on inside of me isn't this like unknown crazy, like, oh, geez, mysterious thing. We all know there's a good reason for it being there. And it's probably protective, and it's probably has served us in some way. I think just being in a group of people that knows that and operates from that it changes everything. And then it does become a growth community. Or even if we're in that stage of healing, a healing community where you don't get kicked out once you're better, right? Like once you're better, you don't lose your community. That's hard too, right? Because sometimes that's a big thing. People don't realize. If you come out of chronic illness is one of those easy ones to do.
Well, there's a bunch of them, right? I mean, even if you're evolving in your way of thinking about life or the earth or the planet or about, religion or whatever it is, you sort of, in one sense, feel ousted from the group that you were, well, this is just the way it is, whether that's ailment, illness, relationship problems, whatever, like this is just the way life is, to this new, but does it have to be that way? And let's figure out how to grow. And it's hard to stay in those kind of groups. You can't really. But if you're in a group, a community, a mindset of friends and people that are, I use the word like-minded, but really just open-minded, right? To more and more growth, and let's see where we can go, and curiosity and differentiation and autonomy and all of these other things. It's a very different place.
Yeah, I have a great example of this. So we had a client that had struggled with depression and insomnia for most of their lives. And had even developed a bit of an online presence, kind of around, in this person's own words, like the depressive insomniac, right? And her connection point with so many people was depressive insomniac. And all the different iterations of that and all the different struggles with being an insomniac and this depressive sort of personality. When she came in and all of that resolved, like within a couple of sessions, right? And that was such a huge shift for her. What she didn't expect was the negative impact she would receive in her community. In her mind, she thought, oh my goodness, people are going to be so excited to know that there is help for, long-term insomnia and depression. And she had a rude awakening. She lost a large percentage of her followers because they were, for their own very good reasons, a bit angry and felt like she had sort of abandoned them.
Or that, well, her stuff wasn't ever real if she could really change, right?
That's some of the comments that ended up coming later. And her stepping into empowerment was not attractive to a subset of her audience. And so she lost those people after a bit of kicking and screaming. And initially that did register as a loss for her. And often, and we talk about this, I did a social media post about this recently, that in this growth process, we often lose. We think we're losing, but it is that shedding off of layers.
Right.
I do not fit into my clothing that I wore as a 7-year-old.
That's probably a good thing.
It is probably a good thing, but we kind of don't realize that about ourselves too. Like there's layers that we shed. Maturity never stops. At least it shouldn't. Growth never stops. And this was that idea around the old science around the brain was that we were set, 35, done, set. You cannot change after 35. You are set in your ways. All of your beliefs are set. And then you're just going to deepen those going forward. And we really saw a world that bought into that for a long time. What we know now is the brain is plastic, neuroplasticity, meaning our brain can continue to change. Guys, it doesn't stop. We can see brain change in people in their 80s. So, and in fact, the healthier your brain is, the more change you see, the more changeability, the more plasticity we see. Mm-hmm. So that this is this idea that we are meant to continue to evolve and grow. And there's, deeper levels of consciousness that we can get to, even if we're not aware that they exist. If we continue, we do expand. And it's such a beautiful thing. It's not always easy to move outside of those known ways. People like to keep us in our roles and in our definitions and our labels. And it's threatening. I think this is the thing that we need to realize. It is threatening sometimes to grow and change.
Threatening not only for us and our safety mechanisms, but threatening for others.
Yeah, that's mainly what I was talking about. It really is, well, we often don't grow and change until we resolve the threat within us, within ourselves. But once we do, and we do expand and we grow, it is a threat to people because just the very nature of our growth and our expansion calls them higher energetically. And that can feel really uncomfortable to people because maybe they don't have the same resources they think. Because from that victim mindset that we've spoken about before, it says, I can't change unless this changes, my environment changes, or I am this way because of my environment, which means they're waiting to heal, to change, to expand, and to grow until the world gets to where it needs to get to, or their environment or the people around them gets. So it's just such a powerless place to be. When they see that somebody else went ahead and did it, that is threatening to them in a lot of ways. And we're not saying this in a judgmental way. I see it as a really compassionate point of view to say, okay, this is why they're having such strong reactions. This is why and we've talked about this a little bit before, where people want to keep us in that definition, in that old way of being, so often because the fact that we did change just even sets an invitation out that, hey, maybe you could too.
Well, and this happened, I mean, if we're bringing it even personally here, this happened, and we've talked about this happened in our relationship, right? Yes. Like you started getting well, I could no longer hold you in the sick role, although I tried to, right? Or in the I have to take care of you role, or that you're not well enough or good enough or strong enough or whatever. And I tried to keep you there because it threatened I was only strong if you were kind of pushed down. And so your wellness, physically, mentally, emotionally, threatened me. At the same time, I think about my family, like as I started leveling up, speaking up, having my own voice, being able to say what I think, what I believe, do what I want, it actually sent some threats towards my immediate, growing up family of, this is, and kind of trying to put me back in that role of just kind of being, well, that's just Kent, or that's just him, or, well, you're supposed to be this way and whatever. And when I kind of fought against that, it was a little bit of a fight. Yeah. Just like it was with you and me.
It's a little uncomfortable. Yes. Yeah. But I think the more that we see, and I think you got to that place where we stop fighting against people fighting against us.
Right.
And we just say like, okay, I will give you the space for that. And, sometimes we do have boundaries that need to arise out of our places of safety and abundance. Again, this is circling us back to we need to have a boundary conversation, the way that we frame boundaries. But that being said, if they come out of abundance rather than lack, they come out of safety rather than danger, then that sets a tone.
Yeah.
And those boundary lines tend to be a little softer and not softer so that people can push against them. People feel them softer. And so there's a little more room for conversation. They don't feel as judgmental or as hard against. And so that there is really something to be said for that. But yeah, I think it's something that with our community, with the Mind Change community, that thought that we need to keep digging for more trauma or finding more resources, that was for me too. At one point I was like, I can't really find any more resources to support this idea that I was like neglected and unloved as a child, ooh, what do I do with that? Because then that had become an identity. And after I had gotten it validated, then it was like, well, what do I become if I lose this? like, what does that mean? And you have to sort of wrestle with all of that stuff and deal with that stuff, those belief systems. And once I was like, I don't really need to have that anymore, it challenges some of the framework that we put ourselves in, some of the ways that we did life with other people. And those are all, again, listen, that is where the growth comes in. Okay, I need to grow in that area. I have some growth to happen in that area. Maybe it's not the healing I need to have, because maybe it's not coming from a wound. Maybe it's coming from the construct that I held. It's the boundaries that I had before that have now expanded and have grown. And now I have some stuff to explore. My boundary lines have gotten bigger. I have more exploration to do. And that is that idea of growth rather than healing.
Right. And again, the healing portion is important. Like if you break your leg or something like that, okay, let it heal. But going to the gym and building strength isn't about protecting or healing your leg anymore, right? It's about strengthening it, seeing how much weight you can push and what, that kind of stuff. And so that's the same thing with our lives, is there are wounds that need to be mended and cared for and healed. But then we get into the gym emotionally, whatever, and we build that muscle up. We continue to grow and expand and evolve.
Yeah, and I think that's just to sort of close up a bit of the danger in this whole like personal development wellness movement. Mm-hmm. Is I've noticed, I was just in conversation like a week ago with somebody who was talking about like ready to invest and start moving forward in their mind change journey. And then I was hearing the verbiage being used that the only way this person was allowing themselves to do this was because of how broken they were. It was almost like they had to keep saying, this is what I've messed up, and this is what I've messed up, and this is what I keep doing, and this is what I keep doing, to justify them taking this step into just really like being interested in themselves. Like they had to see it from I can't fix it unless it's broken. Which, yes, but we're not trying to fix. Like, but you're so worthy of growth and investment and care, and like you don't have to be messed up to be cared for.
Right.
And so we don't like, that's to justify going on another retreat or taking another course or buying another session or putting a little bit more work into it. People think they need to find like a valuable enough problem, where no, the value isn't found in the problem, the value is found in us. And then that stuff just comes naturally.
So if I have time for one more question here, we're talking about growth mindset versus the healing, just need to continue to heal mindset. But then we're also talking about community here, right? And the differences of the kind of community we will naturally be involved with depending on what our mindset is, right? And so for those who are wanting to, they recognize maybe, I've been a little bit in the, things are happening to me, or I've been a part of these communities where I just need to heal and I'm never really healing, or whatever. Or maybe it's not about healing physically, right? Maybe it's like I've been in these communities that have kind of kept me stuck and I'm trying to break free. I'm trying to break out and move forward, but I don't know how. I know that, and this isn't the question yet, but I know that we had one of our students decide, she's leveling up, she's changing, and she just started some book clubs with her friends, right? Of like, you know what? I want to build, because she recognized her community was a little bit more of a victim community, like things are happening and, it's so hard and all of that. And she said, man, let's get some people together. But aside from her doing that, do you have more examples, more ideas for people who do want to get involved in a growth mindset community? I think that's probably what a lot of people are looking for, even when they're just going to these healing things, right? They're looking for a community where they can expand, but they kind of get stuck.
Yeah, gosh, so many examples come to my mind too, to sort of expand our idea around this. I will say, again, probably another episode, but addiction, boy, you see this in the addiction world as well. And it really comes from this idea. One of the first things you're told in treatment is that, you sit in a room with all the intake people and they say, let's say there's 10 people sitting there. They'll say, 9 of you will relapse. and be here again. Oh,
these are at addiction centers.
Yeah, this is at rehab. This is when you're about to go into rehab. You're about to spend however many days, months, years in this community, and only you're looking around and wait, like only one of us is going to be the one. And let me tell you, if you are doing addiction, likely your self view is probably, you don't think you're the one, if there's even one, right? You don't think that's going to be you. So you sort of are setting yourself up to come back and do this all over again and relapse. And it's a really sad and unfortunate system. That being said, how do you find community? You can't shortcut this though. You find community with people who are like. So you can't join a community of growth-centered people unless you have that to offer as
Started
well.
That journey yourself.
Yeah, so I'd say where people start, read the book. Let me tell you, even though we probably need to revise the book, it was 4 years ago is when it came out. And with neuroscience, oh my goodness, we were just talking about this today. It's still, if you are operating from a victim mindset or a wounded mindset, it's going to be challenging. It's going to push some buttons. I think it's a really good place to start. If it resonates and if it is a little bit triggery, but there's something in you that is like, I like what you're saying. I don't like what you're saying, but something in me says this could be true. That's a great place to start. And I'd say just do some people, like quite a few people have read the book and implemented. We lay it all out there. We give everything away.
Well, people have set up consults after starting to read the book and then canceled their consult because they finished the book and they're like, oh, my problems are
yeah,
gone.
Right. It really, it can very much help people when you've got the tools. It gives people the tools. I would say that's the first, is your mind ready to stretch? And you may say, my mind is ready, and every other part of me is going, no, fine. That's okay. We can work with that, right? So then another option is get a session. Sign up with a practitioner, get a session, really see those first steps of it can be different. It's amazing to just get those first ways that your mind can change. And that's amazing to do. If someone's like, I am all in, get the course. The course automatically enters you into, first of all, it gives you sessions. You buy the course, you get in sessions included, but you're added to that community already. And so we learn from each other and we grow from each other, and everyone is in different states of arrival.
Yeah.
There is no end arrival. We're still growing and learning and changing. And that's why we do this, is so we can keep the conversations going. So there's no state of arrival, but everyone is in their own place and learning from each other and coming from that, okay, I want to learn more and I'm taking personal responsibility for me is such an amazing thing to do. And we learn so much from the community as well. So I think those, we can't do it from I will get from the community. The best communities are the ones that we get into to exchange. We are exchanging.
Everyone's giving, right? And then by default,
yes,
we also receive.
Yes. And that is a big shift of I'm coming because I have something to offer. And sometimes we got to do a little bit of work around even thinking that and believing that, but we can do that work. And then we come into the community with where we're at, knowing that we have some tools, knowing that we have some ability to do so, and then learning more and sharing more with that. So that's really great.
Well, thanks so much for this conversation. It's really dear to me, this idea of from healing to growing. I'm passionate about that because, man, it's so easy to get, stuck in this idea of more problems to fix versus, man, I have such an expanse of the sky is the limit, right? Of where I can go and grow. So,
well, this was actually your idea. You speak about this in our module 2 of the training course, partially because we noticed some students, using this, but through that sort of other framework of that like constantly healing framework, and like, oh, there's a difference between the people that seem to be in this other mindset, which we've identified as a growth mindset, versus the healing mindset. And so it's something that we talk about with our students so that we can sort of shift out of that.
Yep.
So thank
Awesome.
you.
Yeah, of course.
And thank you guys, all of you listeners and watchers, for joining us once again. We really couldn't do this without you. We are so grateful for your support, for all of your lovely 5-star reviews, for sharing this to someone else who needs to hear this. So thank you for doing that. Please follow us on social media. We've always got things going on, and share everything there. And yeah, so join us again next time as we endeavor to change the world one mind at a time.